If you've just started making candles or you're thinking about making candles, then this video is for you, because today we're going to go through everything that you need to know to make the perfect glass candle. Welcome everyone, I'm Reese. I'm one half of the Care Company. We're a skincare and fragrance brand, and on this channel we talk about everything that's needed to go into running your own part-time business. Now, if you like this channel and you like our vibe, it really would be appreciated, because we've just started out on this YouTube journey. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, that really would help us out. But let's just get straight into the video. Now, my last video actually went on for quite a while, so I'm going to try and make this candle and try and make the video in about 10 minutes, just so we can get through it pretty quickly. Now, I am going to do future videos which I'll go into a lot more depth about the amount of fragrance, the amount of wax, how we've kind of come up with our candle testing formula, all that information, just to help you if you are starting out on your journey. But let's just get cracking straight into the video. Now, to make this candle, we're going to need a few ingredients. So let's get them out and go through them so you know what's required. Okay, so those that have watched my previous video where we made a tin candle, not a glass candle, you'll notice that the layout's pretty much the same, but there are a couple of different variables that we've got to take into consideration when making a different type of vessel candle. Now let's just go through each item one by one, just so you understand what's actually going to be required in your candle. Now here we've got some fragrance. It's up to you if you want to use fragrance or if you want to use essential oils. We use essential oils in some of our dog products, candle fragrance products for dogs, just because it seems to be a lot more sensitive for the dogs. Some dogs have a pretty bad reaction to fragrances, so we use essential oils. But for this candle, fragrance is fine. Now, we've got the wick setter. This, if you don't know, sits on top of the candle, wick goes in the middle, keeps it nice and straight. Do you need this type of wick setter? No, you don't. You can easily use something that's lying around the house. This is like a kebab stick or something. You can easily sit this across the top, wrap your wick around it if it's long enough, or just set it up against it, and it should keep the wick pretty straight. This is fine if you're just starting out from home and you're just going to make candles for yourself or some family, friends, for loved ones. But if you're starting to get into business and you're wanting to make sure that quality control is consistent, very important in business, then this is the way forward. This keeps it nice and central, uniform, same position each time, and you can't go wrong with that, really. Moving along, you can't make a candle if you don't have any wax, or maybe you can. If you can, put it in a comment, let me know how you do that. But you need some wax. This is soy wax, this is 464, very versatile type of wax. I'm going to do a video all about different types of waxes and explain that in more detail. But if you're starting out, 464, you can't really go wrong with that. You can mess up your fragrance loads, and it's pretty susceptible to your mistakes, my mistakes. And it's just a good general all-round wax. It's got its downfalls, absolutely, but that's for another video. Basically, get yourself some wax. We use Candle Shack when we buy our wax supplies. It's very cheap, it's very efficient, and the turnaround service is pretty good if you're in the UK. Now, similar to my previous videos, you're going to have to get yourself some wicks. Now, depending on your wax, your fragrance, the type of vessel, the wick will change. Or you might think, well, based on the vessel, then the wick will change, etc, etc. Now, for this wick, in comparison to the tin candle demonstration I did, this is actually going to be a bigger wick. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, because I'm going to try and get this video nicely done pretty quick, like I promised. But this is just a set of wicks, again, that we get from Candle Shack. And on the end, this is nail clippers. I actually do need to clip my nails, but this is for trimming the wick at the end, and I'll show you how I do that. Now, the next stage is weighing out your fragrance. I did say weigh, this is liquid obviously, but we don't go on measurements of a liquid volume. You always go on weight volume when you're measuring out your liquids with anything to do with candles. I'll talk about that in another video. So next thing to do is weigh out your fragrance, weigh out your wax. If you're following a recipe, then weigh out with that. If you're starting out, there's lots of information on the internet you can use to then start to be able to work on different sort of ratios. There's a lot of different good channels on YouTube. Black Tie Barn, fantastic channel. Memory Candle Box, that's a great channel. Both of them, a lot more skilled than me if I'm honest. And there's a lot more content on their channels. They can really help you out if you're getting started. But for this video, I'm just going to quickly weigh up my wax, quickly weigh up my fragrance, and we'll get started. So I've weighed up my wax and I've weighed up my fragrance, but I've actually missed a step which I normally do before I've done that, and that is actually prep my vessel. So let me set these aside for a second. So what we need to do with this, again similar to what I did in the tin candle demonstration, is we need to clean the vessel out. What I use for that is a little spray of alcohol spray, so just a little spritz. And the reason that we do that is twofold. One, it's to clean up the vessel. Sometimes if you've got candles lying around, they might get a little bit of dust, a little bit of debris. Certainly if they've been shipped in dusty sort of containers, they might get some debris in there. So it's always good practice to clean them out a little bit before you ship them off to your clients. But also, it allows you to get better purchase on the glass when it comes to one of these adhesive pads, which I also missed in the lineup of equipment. B- for that. So what you want to do, get your adhesive tab, take the little yellow sticker off, press it down, and it's important that you make sure you press it down firmly enough so that the wick is really well set up against this pad. Then it should just peel off like that. Dispose of that for just now. And again, this is one of the most challenging aspects of making candles for me, is making sure that I get this centered. So no, I'm not going to be stalled. It just looks like I'm stalled because I'm concentrating. Let me get this whacked in the middle. Ooh, that's pretty good, even if I do say so myself. So the wick is nicely centered. You want to make sure you press it down on all angles, and you want to be able to have the confidence that you could hold this vessel. Now this is a heavy glass vessel, but you should be able to hold the vessel up by the wick and it not come away there. If it's coming away, unless it's an incredibly heavy vessel obviously, if it's coming away when you're holding the wick, then either your adhesive pads are no use, maybe you need to clean out the inside of the vessel. Think about those two things if it's not sticking well, but really it should be sticking if you've done all those things. If you've not done that, then I would maybe try and buy your adhesive pads somewhere else because they're obviously not sticky enough. So once we've done that, let's just take the bow tie little wick holder, pop it down in the middle, and then just, all you need to do is just nip the wick across like that, and that's a nice straight vertical, very vertical wick that's standing to attention and will remain standing to attention when you fill it with your hot wax. So now that we have prepped the vessel, measured out the wax, measured out the fragrance, all there is left really to do is melt this, pour that in there, wait a little bit, then pour that in there. That's pretty much how you make a candle, very simplified. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this off camera. I'm going to go melt the wax. I'm going to bring it up to about 180 degrees, 185 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, 185 degrees Fahrenheit. I then let that cool to about 160. I then add my fragrance and I pour about 145, 150, depending on how hot the room is, and therefore how hot the vessel is. Now some people preheat their vessels, depending on what part of the world you're in. If it's incredibly cold and your vessel is, really cold to the touch, I would actually suggest that, especially when it comes to 464. Today, it's a relatively sunny day. It's not too cold. This isn't too cold to the touch, so I won't be preheating this, and we'll see how we get on. So I've went ahead and melted that wax down in this little nifty candle wax pot, and I melt the wax down to about 180, 185 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, all the hard wax is completely solidified and turned into liquid wax. There's no lumps, there's no bumps, and it's all nice and golden clear. Now, different waxes will require melting at different temperatures, but for us, with 464 anyway, 180 to 185 works just perfectly. Now what you need to do is you just need to continuously stir it, not too vigorously. Last thing you want to do is get any air pockets in it, but keep moving the wax over every 30 seconds or so, and then you need to bring it down to the temperature at which you are content to add your fragrance. Now for us, for this specific ratio, round about 155 is where we add our fragrance, which will again drop the temperature down pretty quickly. And what I've actually done is I've actually wicked up 3 jars because I actually added a little bit more wax. When you melt just a little bit of wax, it tends to melt very, very quickly, and you have to add a tiny little bit of fragrance. So just for this video, I've melted 3. If going through a more in-depth video of how to make a candle, literally from start to finish, and that would probably be about half an hour, 45-minute video, if that's something that you think would be worthwhile for me to do, put it in the comments below and I'll happily do that. Something that I really want to try and achieve in this channel is to just provide all the information that I've got. All the information I've got is just from scouring the internet, watching other YouTube videos, watching other YouTube channels, TikTok, Instagram, getting all these little tips and tricks, and then just trying it out for myself. If I can help anybody start a little part-time business, a little side hustle, just like what we've started, then that would really be quite rewarding, and it's really something we want to try and achieve with this channel. But enough of the sob story about what I'm trying to do here. What I'm really trying to do is get this wax down to temperature and then add my fragrance. Now you notice that I've been checking the temperature with this. If you're just starting out and you're starting to do candles in the house, if you've got a thermometer, that should do the trick. But it's actually quite difficult to dip it in there, hold it, take it out, check it. One of these, you could buy them for, I don't know, 15 quid or something, 20 quid, 10 quid off of Amazon or anywhere else. Very inexpensive for the ease and the quickness and the cleanliness. Obviously when you point and shoot, you don't have to then wipe it down afterwards, which you would have to do with another thermometer. So if you're going to be making candles a little more frequently and you want a good quality control, again, I seem to love that phrase, then I would definitely suggest getting one of these, because it just makes it a lot easier. So we've actually got that temperature down to 154, if you could just see that. Now I'm actually going to add my fragrance here because it's actually gotten a little bit cooler. So I'll add the fragrance in, and again, make sure that you get every last drop of fragrance in there. You've measured these out exactly, so you want to make sure you get every drop in there. And once you've added your fragrance, now this is actually really important to make sure that you stir this through fully. You want to make sure that the fragrance and the wax is getting completely mixed together. So what I tend to do is I do about 30 rotations one way. I've actually lost count of how many I've done. And then I'll stop. And I'll do about 30 the other way. Now you want to make sure that you're still, I actually messed up there. You want to make sure that you're still checking the temperature, because what you'll find is once you've added your fragrance, the temperature of the wax will drop very quickly. One thing that I found quite useful is, if I could take it out, this spoon. This spoon's obviously got some sort of like grates or holes in the back of the spoon. I don't know what you actually properly call them. But when it comes to stirring it, it really doesn't seem to cause much bubbles in the way. Because I guess the fluid can move through the spoon as well, as opposed to getting sort of twirled around by a solid spatula or a solid spoon. For us, it's just worked really well and we don't get any air bubbles. Let's have another check of the temperature. So that's dropped down now to about 140, 141, which is the temperature we're going to pour at today. I'm going to just turn these. Maybe you want to make sure that when you're starting to pour, you angle things just to make it a little bit easier for you. Now I would normally be stood up and I'd have a load of jars out and it would just be a little bit easier. But I've angled the wick setters just off a little bit to allow me to pour it better. Take this guy off. Try and get all the wax off your spoon if you can, otherwise you're just going to have to clean it. But again, this is YouTube, so this is going to be quite tricky. Put that to one side, and then all you need to do is pour. A nice steady hand, a slow pour, making sure you don't spill any down the outside of the vessel. And try to stop any bubbles. I actually got a couple of bubbles there. And then the second one. This is so much harder when you're sat down. And then the last one, I've actually not spilt any, which is pretty good. Bring that up to the top, about there. Top this guy up to about there. And the last bit on this guy. There we go. Now if we just set that aside, pop that down there. I'm going to try not to move these too much, because if you start to move the wax around, if you start to move the candle around quite quickly, what you'll have is the wax will slide up the side of the glass, and you'll look at it and it'll be fine. But then once it hardens, you'll have a little kind of wax, I don't know, wax wave in the glass. Now you can sort that out with a heat gun later on, that's no issue. But if you can prevent it, saves you work down the road, and it just saves you time in the long run. So there you go, you've made 3 perfect little soy candles. Now, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to let these guys cool down. Depending on what part of the world you're at, what part of the country that you're at in the UK, Scotland or England, and what time of the year it is, and if you can afford to put heating on, will depend on how quickly these guys cool down. Now, if you're in a cold place and you leave them out to the environment just like this, they will cool down quite quickly, but if you leave them out like this, you're going to be prone to wet spots, to divots, and all sorts of funky stuff that's going on with them. What we normally do is we keep them in the box that they come with. We get these glass vessels from Candle Shack, 30cl Lottie, I think they're called, and they come in a nice little box, and we keep them in there, keep them nice and cozy. Some people wrap tinfoil around them, cling film, some sort of like paper around them, stuff like that. You could do all that stuff. It just depends on what you're wanting to achieve. If wet spots are a big thing to you, and just kind of how seriously you're taking your candle making. We never leave them like this, if I'm honest. 1, I don't think it's very safe. 2, it just doesn't keep them warm enough and you get wet spots and all that sort of stuff. But it's up to you, practice it, see what matters. But as a rule of thumb, I would leave these candles now. I would put them somewhere safe, put them on a shelf, away from pets, away from kids, away from, I don't know, if you're playing with the kids and you throw a ball, whatever. Keep them nice and safe, out of reach, and then just don't move them. Don't move them for a day if you can certainly help it. At least 12 hours, and then you can put them somewhere else and stuff. But you want to give these candles enough time to cool down nice and gradually so that they set well. Now, if you do have any issues with candles, and again, I'm going to make another video about this, there's lots of ways that you can treat them once they're cooled down. If they've got divots, if they've got wet spots, blah, 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 we can sort that out afterwards with a little bit of a heat gun and a little bit of TLC on the candle. There's nothing else to do with these candles other than to set them aside and let them cool gently. Now, if you've had any value from this video, I really would appreciate a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. This is us just starting out on a side venture, part-time business, side hustle, whatever you want to call it. Making candles, making stuff, this is not my full-time job. I've got a very busy, very stressful normal job. And this is just a little bit of fun that takes your mind away from the humdrum of normal life, your normal day-to-day grind, and it just allows you to get involved in something else and just have a bit of a laugh with it. If you've got advice on any other videos that you want to see in the future, also drop that in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if not, I hope you enjoy your week, and don't forget to trim your wick.